Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Mr. Rader back for another review session for participation in government. And in this part two video of the expert outreach, we'll look at the lesson that we went over on January 4th and January 5th of 2022, looking specifically at how to engage in outreach for experts. And the homework assignment for that day was to begin the actual outreach to experts. It will be due on January 21st, which is also the day that your revised background paper will be due. More information will be included in a future video on how to do revisions for the background paper based on the comments provided on your papers. For the opening question in your Google Doc, you'll make a self-to-text connection for this quote. This is from Thomas Edison, a very famous inventor of the late 19th century. And he says, quote, "Opportunity is missed by most people because it is dressed in overalls and looks like work." So really kind of think about what Mr. Edison is trying to tell us and how we can connect this to our own lives. The first activity, what you'll look at is you'll try to generate questions that would be worthwhile to ask different experts for your quality of life issue. So for example, let's say you had an idea. And the idea that you were looking at the quality of life issue of poor body posture, and you wanted to try to promote greater awareness of the dangers of poor body posture. So a question that you might want to ask a local professional, in this case, a physician, is as follows. In your experience as a physician, how often do patients come to you with back pain? And what do you recommend them to do to manage their pain? The question is specifically targeted for that particular local professional and is designed in such a way that the professional can speak to their past experiences and their credentials to answer the question that you would have for that expert. This next slide is an example of a response from an expert to one of my students a couple of years ago. It's actually a really nice email, so if you want to take a minute and look at it, I certainly encourage you to do so. And you can see that the expert not only provides my students with a variety of resources to help them with the revision of the background paper, but also towards the end of the response letter actually offers them a very specific intervention to help them with their recommendation and their implementation plan, which is a part of the proposal that's done in the second semester of the course in economics. So let's take a look at the lesson itself. So as you'll see in class, students were given 2 days to work on this. And if you're looking at this video now, you're either reviewing the material or you are turning it in a little after the fact. So really what you want to consider is for each of these expert types, what are some possible questions that might be helpful for that person? So for example, community activists tend to lobby government officials. They tend to do a lot of grassroots work. So you may want to ask them a question about something happening in the community, in the neighborhood, and what they can do to address that issue. Government officials really will look at laws, programs, and funding for specific ideas. So you may want to ask them questions that relate to that. The kinds of questions that you would want to ask the expert, you can refer back to part one video to learn more about that. But these are just some examples of things you might want to ask your expert. And then in terms of the lesson itself, what you're going to want to do is identify what kind of person you're trying to reach out to. So in this case, the academic researcher, I'm going to highlight it just to make it very clear that that is who I want to reach out to. I'm going to write down their name and title, the organization, agency, or institution that they work for, an email address, and a phone number. And the reason why I want to do that is I want to have multiple ways that I could contact this person so that if my first attempt does not work, whether that be the phone call or the email, I have some backup options and I have some flexibility to help me find this expert. And then you just write down one thing that you'd like to learn from them. You'll repeat the same process for your second expert and your third expert. In the end, for this project, the WISE Foundation requires competitive proposals to have at least one primary source in the background paper or the field research paper. So therefore, you can get one response from an expert. Some of you may get lucky and get a response immediately with the first outreach you have. Others of you may have to contact maybe even a dozen experts before you actually get a response. My recommendation for finding experts is to look at your annotated bibliography, specifically part 2 of the annotated bibliography, because you'll see the list of the writers who wrote the articles that you read for your background research paper. And specifically look at the ones who wrote scholarly journals because they likely have a background as an academic researcher. Also take a look at your sources for the prompt on the government agencies and the prompt on nonprofit organizations, because you can find additional experts who can help you with your project. And if all else fails, what you could always do is just take your topic. For example, let's say you were doing community gardens. You could say experts on community gardens in Google and see what you get. Or let's say your topic was looking at bike lanes. You can say individuals or city council members who voted on bike lane legislation, and kind of just see what comes up and study through the results. That's it. That was the lesson itself. So this concludes the second part of our two-part series on expert outreach. Stay tuned for the next video where we'll look at how to design a survey. Have a great day, everybody.